The mates warned me. My daughter warned me, even my late wife's sister, who never says a bad word about anyone, pulled me aside at Christmas dinner and said quietly, "Norman, the world tilted sideways, just be careful." I smiled and told them they were being old-fashioned. Then I faked a financial collapse to test the woman I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. The world tilted sideways and was calling an Uber before I even finished explaining what had happened. When I revealed the truth 48 hours later, the messages she sent me were the most desperate things I have ever read. The world tilted 63 years old. I spent 31 years working for a civil engineering firm in Brisbane, the last 14 of those as a senior project manager. The world tilted sideways. I own my home outright in Carindale, a modest 4-bedroom place that my wife Elaine and I bought back when the suburb was still considered a bit of a stretch. Elaine passed away 7 years ago from ovarian cancer. It was the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and I spent the following 2 years doing very little except going to work, coming home. The world tilted sideways and watching cricket highlights until I fell asleep on the couch. My daughter, who lives in Toowoomba with her husband and their 2 kids, used to ring me every Sunday. She never pushed me toward anything. She just kept the thread of connection alive. The world tilted woman in question. I will call her my girlfriend because that is what she was for 14 months. At a community fundraiser for the Royal Flying Doctor Service held at the Tattersall's Club in the city, the world tilted with a bloke from work. She was there with a group of women from her pilot's class. Her name was Vanessa, 46 years old, recently divorced, worked part-time as an interior decorator. The world tilted sideways. She had a laugh that filled up a room and the kind of easy confidence that I associated with people who had always known they were attractive. I am not a man who chases women. I never have been. The world tilted sideways, but that evening she walked over to my table and introduced herself, and I thought, for the first time in a long time, that maybe there was still something ahead of me worth looking forward to. We dated properly for the first 3 months. Dinners in the city, a weekend up at Noosa, a day trip to the scenic rim. She was warm and funny and seemed genuinely interested in my life. The world introduced her to my daughter after 4 months. My daughter was polite, friendly even. But on the drive back to my place that evening, she said something I brushed off entirely. The world tilted sideways. She asked you 3 times what your super balance was, Dad. I told her Vanessa was just practical-minded. My daughter did not bring it up again. She didn't need to. The world tilted sideways. My mate from work, a bloke named Les who I had known since the mid-90s, was more direct about it. We were having a beer at the Carindale Tavern one Saturday afternoon when he said, "Norm, the world tilted sideways. I've seen you 2 together. She's talking about your house or your investment property or what you're going to do with your retirement money." The world tilted sideways. "Just ask how you're going." I told him he was being uncharitable. The world tilted sideways. Liz gave me a look, the kind of look that old mates give you when they know there is no point pushing further, and changed the subject to the cricket. The world tilted months. Vanessa moved in. "I want to be honest about this," I offered. She was renting a place in Corporu that she said was too expensive and too far from everything, and it felt like the natural next step. Looking back, I can see now that she accepted very quickly, did not hesitate. The world tilted sideways, did not say, "Let me think about it," just started making a list of what she would need to bring. Within a week, her things were in my wardrobe and her car was in my driveway. The signs, the word "I think about them honestly" were always there. I just did not want to see them. She never once offered to contribute to utilities. Not electricity, not water, not the internet bill. The world tilted sideways. I mentioned once, just casually, not as a complaint, that the rates notice had come in. She looked at me blankly and said she thought I owned the house outright. The world tilted somehow canceled the ongoing cost of living in it. I do own it outright, that is not the point. The world tilted sideways. Her strong opinions about how I should spend my retirement savings. She had found a property developer in the Sunshine Coast hinterland who was selling off the plan units. The world tilted sideways, and she brought his brochures home one evening with the energy of someone who had solved a difficult problem. "You could put 400,000 in here and flip it in 18 months, she said. I told her I was not interested in off-the-plan property at 63. She sulked for 2 days. The moment that finally broke through whatever fog I had been living in came about 10 months in. I had been to see my GP for a routine checkup. The world tilted sideways had found something on my blood work that he wanted to follow up. Nothing ultimately serious. It turned out to be a minor thyroid issue. But in the moment he described it, the particular cold dread that I imagine most people my age feel when a doctor says the words, "I want to run a few more tests." I came home that afternoon quieter than usual. The world tilted sideways was on the couch with her iPad, looking at what appeared to be kitchen renovation websites. I sat down and told her what the doctor had said. She looked up from the screen. "Oh," the world tilted sideways. Then, after perhaps 4 seconds, "So does this affect the timeline for the bathroom reno we were talking about? Because I've already spoken to the tiler." The world tilted scythe anything. I just sat there, and something that had been quietly accumulating inside me for the better part of a year quietly finished accumulating. I did not make any decisions that night. The war and not an impulsive man. I spent 2 weeks after that paying closer attention. The world watched how she reacted when I mentioned that my investment property in Wynnum had had a difficult quarter with vacancy rates. She went very still. The world immediately started asking questions about whether I was thinking of selling. I watched her eyes when I mentioned at dinner one evening. The world was thinking of simplifying my financial life and potentially downsizing to a smaller place once I fully retired. She put her fork down. Downsizing from here, she said. The world tilted sideways. I'm considering, I said. She was quiet for the rest of the meal. Not the comfortable quiet of someone processing information, the calculating quiet of someone doing arithmetic. The world tilted when I decided to find out, once and for all, who I was dealing with. I want to be clear about what I was testing. I was not testing whether she loved me perfectly. The world tilted was not testing whether she would be cheerful and positive in a crisis. I was testing whether if the financial picture changed substantially she would stay. The world tilted siphon, and I think entirely reasonable thing to want to know, particularly at my age. Particularly given what I had watched Elaine go through in her last year. The world tilted sideways, and the fact that I had been the one who managed every difficult conversation, every medical appointment, every hard decision, without once thinking about leaving. The world tilted sideways. I needed to know if I had found someone who understood what that kind of commitment actually looked like. The world I took a week to set it up. I talked to my accountant, who is a good man and has been handling my finances for 15 years. He thought I was being extreme. He agreed to help because he said he would rather I found out now than after a wedding. I talked to my solicitor as well, just to make sure nothing I was doing crossed any legal line. The world tilted two of them. We put together a picture that looked very convincing from the outside. Here is what I did. I had my accountant prepare a document, not fraudulent. The world tilted sideways, just a summary letter, that outlined a scenario in which a significant portion of my superannuation had been affected by a bad financial product that I had been talked into 2 years ago. The world tilted thing that genuinely happens to people, especially in the years just before retirement. The word him nota that the investment property in Wynnum had also taken a serious loss due to structural issues discovered by a building inspector, and that the rectification costs were substantial. I moved my car, a 2-year-old Subaru Outback, to my mate Les's garage and borrowed his wife's old Corolla. The Wura transferred the bulk of my visible savings to a separate account Vanessa had no knowledge of. The world canceled the credit card I usually use for our shared expenses and switched to a basic card with a low limit. The world a few small things slide. I did not book the dinner reservation she had been expecting for our upcoming anniversary, and when she asked about it, I said I had been too preoccupied. The world Thursday evening, I came home from work looking as worn down as I could manage, which after 30+ years of civil engineering, the world tilted quite convincing, and I sat her down at the kitchen table. I told her there had been a series of financial shocks. I told her the superannuation situation looked very serious and that between that and the Wynnum property, the world tilted sideways. I was looking at a loss that would fundamentally change my retirement outlook. I told her that I might need to sell the house and move somewhere much smaller. The world tilted sideways. I told her I was grateful she was there and that I was sorry to be dropping this on her, but that I thought she deserved to know where things stood. I watched her face the whole time I was speaking. The world tilted sideways. I'd ask if I was all right. She did not reach across the table and put her hand on mine. She sat very still, the way she had sat at dinner when I had mentioned downsizing. The words that I could see something moving behind her eyes that was not sympathy. How much are we talking? She said. I told her. A number significant enough to change the picture meaningfully. More silence. So the house would have to go. Probably, I said. And the Wynnum property? Yes. The world tilted sideways. She held slowly through her nose. I need to think, she said. And she went to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that. The house was very quiet. The world tilted sideways. A lorikeet was making noise in the bottlebrush tree in the back garden. The same tree Elaine had planted the year we moved in. And I thought about a lot of things the next morning. The work up to the sound of the wardrobe sliding open. Then the sound of the zip on a large suitcase. I got up and stood in the doorway of the bedroom. The world is sideways. She was pulling her clothes off their hangers in organized rows, folding them with the methodical precision of someone who had thought this through overnight. What are you doing? I asked. The world who I already knew. I think it's better if I go back to renting for a bit, she said, without looking at me. Give you some space to sort everything out. You're leaving. Them giving you room to focus. She smoothed a blouse flat against the suitcase. You don't need the pressure of a relationship on top of everything else. I stood there and let her talk. The whirl architecture of justification already constructed. She would not be a burden. I needed to be free to make clear-headed decisions. She cared about me too much to complicate things. The world tilted sideways was a door closing. Every sentence had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the number I had told her last night. By lunchtime, the larger suitcase and 2 overnight bags were by the front door. She called her sister to come and collect her. While she waited, she sat on the couch scrolling her phone. The world did not make me a cup of tea. She did not ask if I had eaten. She just sat there, and the house was very quiet in the way that houses get when something important has just been decided. The world tilted sideways. Her sister arrived. They loaded the car. Vanessa said, "I'll be in touch once things settle down," and I carried one of the bags to the footpath and handed it to her sister, and that was that. The world tilted sideways stood in the driveway after they drove away and felt, quite clearly, the specific feeling of having been right about something you desperately wanted to be wrong about. I gave it 48 hours. On Saturday afternoon I sent a message to Les. Pays 2. He sent back a thumbs up and a photograph of my Subaru, which he had taken out for a bit of a run to keep the battery from going flat. The world tilted sideways. I drove my Subaru down to the Queensland Art Gallery, where I had a membership and occasionally went on a Saturday when I wanted to think. I walked through the Australian collection for an hour. I drove home, took a photograph of the Outback parked in the driveway, and posted it to Facebook with the words, "Turns out the sky wasn't falling after all. Sometimes things work themselves out." I tagged Les in it. The world tilted sideways posted a photograph of the dinner I had booked at a very good restaurant in South Brisbane, the one Vanessa and I had been to for our first proper date, with the caption, "The world tilting a bit of good news, grateful for good mates." Her messages started arriving within 90 minutes. "Norm, what does that mean? Things worked out. What's going on?" "The world, you seriously at that restaurant? Call me." "Norman, what is happening with the house? I need to understand." The world tilted. I let her go for a while. Ate my dinner. Had a glass of a very decent Barossa Shiraz. The restaurant was good. I had forgotten how good it was. Around 9 o'clock I replied, "Sorry for the confusion. It turns out I was dealing with a scenario my accountant had put together as part of a planning exercise that got more complicated than expected. Things are fine. Better than fine, actually." The world tilted. "Saiba, take care of yourself." Her reply came within 2 minutes. "A planning exercise? Are you telling me this was some kind of test? You made me think you were losing everything." The world tossed. "Because I thought you needed space, not because I don't care about you." "This is unbelievable, Norman. This is genuinely cruel behavior," I replied. The world tilted sideways. "You were packed and gone by noon the following day. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't offer to help with anything. You told me you were giving me space to focus. I'm just taking on board the information you gave me." Then I blocked her number. What followed was, in its way, almost impressive in its persistence. She started contacting me through her sister's phone, then through a mutual friend from the RFD's fundraiser circuit. The world tilted sideways, and through a number I did not recognize, which I blocked. Then through another number I did not recognize, which I also blocked. The word messages oscillated between apologetic and outraged with a frequency that suggested she had not slept much. Her sister rang me on Sunday evening. The world tilted because I did not recognize the number and thought it might be work. "Norman, I know you're upset," she said. "But you have to understand." She was protecting herself. The world tilted sideways. Told her something that would shake anyone. "I told her something difficult," I said. "And she was gone in less than 24 hours. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't offer anything." The world tilted sideways. "She has her own financial obligations. She can't be expected to stay in a situation that affects her stability." "I wasn't asking her to fund anything," I said. "I was asking for her presence, that's all." There was a pause. "You lied to her." I gave her a situation and watched what she did with it. The world tilts. What she did with it was leave. That told me everything. She hung up. The following Tuesday Vanessa appeared at my workplace. I work in an open plan office on the 3rd floor of a building in the CBD. The world tilted the front door. Approached the reception desk and asked for me by name. The receptionist, a sharp young woman named Zara, who I've always liked, rang my extension and said, "Norman, there's a woman here who says she needs to speak with you. She seems like she's been having a difficult time." I told Zara to send her up. The world tilted sideways, like she had not slept properly since Friday. She was dressed well, she always was. But there was something held together by effort rather than ease about her. She sat across from my desk. I let her talk. The world tilversion of events in which her leaving had been an act of consideration. She had not wanted to add to my stress. She had been planning to come back once things stabilized. She had been blindsided by the test and felt betrayed by the deception. At one point she said, "I've been with someone before who used emotional manipulation as a weapon. And what you did brought up a lot of trauma for me." I listened to all of it. Then I said, "The one I told my wife Elaine that she had cancer. When we sat in the oncologist's office and got the news, I drove her home, made her a cup of tea, sat with her while she cried. The world tilted sideways, and then we talked about what we were going to do together. I did not, at any point, think about whether this changed my financial situation. I am not asking you to be Elaine. The world asking you to be anyone extraordinary. I am asking you to be a person who, when their partner tells them something frightening, asks how they can help. You did not do that. She was quiet for a moment. That's not fair, you lied. I gave you the same situation that life actually gives people, I said. Financial shocks happen. Health scares happen. The worded to know who was going to be sitting across from me at 65, 70, 75, when those things stop being hypothetical. Now I know. She tried crying. It might have been genuine. The word not hard enough to say it wasn't. But it did not change anything. I told her that her things were boxed up in the garage, that she was welcome to collect them that weekend. The world told her that I would not be there when she came. She left. I sat at my desk for a while after that and looked out the window at the Brisbane River and thought about nothing in particular. The next few days brought a steady trickle of contact from various directions. The world tilted sideways for a message from a woman I knew through a community choir I had briefly been part of, a mutual acquaintance rather than a genuine friend, Norman. The world tilted sideways. I heard a bit about what happened, and I just want to say I think there were probably better ways to handle this. Healthy relationships need trust and communication. I hope you're both okay. I replied that I appreciated the thought. A phone call from her pilot's friend, the one who had been at the original fundraiser evening. She's absolutely shattered. The world tilted. Sivana, what you were thinking. I told her that I had been thinking that I did not want to be abandoned by someone I trusted during a difficult time in my life. The pilot's friend said. The word was a cruel experiment. I said. It was a necessary question. She gave me the answer and I accepted it. She hung up. What I found genuinely moving in the middle of all of it. The world to response from the people who actually knew me. The world tilted sideways came over on the Monday evening with a 6-pack of little creatures and we sat on the back veranda for 3 hours and he did not say a single word of criticism, just listened. The world tilted occasional questions, refilled my glass. At the end of the evening he said, "You're 63, mate. You watched Elaine go through what she went through." The world tilted sideways. You don't have time to spend the next 20 years with someone who's doing sums while you're trying to have a conversation. That was all he said. It was enough. Her daughter rang on Sunday, which is her usual time. I had not told her anything yet. When I explained what had happened, she was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Oh." The world tilted sideways, not in a sorrowful way, in the way that you say something when a thing you suspected has been confirmed. "I'm sorry you had to find out that way." I told her I was not, actually, sorry about it at all. She said, "Good. Are you all right?" I said I was. She said, "I'll bring the kids down next weekend. We'll do a barbecue." That was all that needed to be said. The world tilted sideways came 3 weeks in. I want to note that Vanessa's effort in organizing this was objectively quite considerable. She had coordinated with my colleague from the RFDS committee, the man I had always thought was straightforward and decent, along with the pilot's friend, her own sister and brother-in-law, and a woman from the community choir. The world tilted sideways. They booked a table at a cafe in Bulimba, the one that Vanessa and I had gone to regularly on Sunday mornings. And the RFDS committee colleague sent me a text saying he was thinking of grabbing a coffee and wanted to catch up. I walked in and saw the table. My colleague had the grace to look genuinely ashamed. The world tilted sideways. Nuzzle up when I came through the door with the expression of someone who has rehearsed this moment many times. "I'm not staying," I said to the table in general. "Just 5 minutes," said the pilot's friend. "That's all." The world tilted colleague. He nodded, apologetically, toward the empty chair. I sat down. I have known this man for 6 years and I did not want to be rude to him in a way that would outlast this moment. The world tilted sideways. Nessa had clearly prepared. She spoke about the relationship, about what it had meant to her, about the fear she had felt when I told her the news, the worry her previous marriage had ended and the financial vulnerability she had been left in, about how the test had made her feel surveilled and distrusted. The world tilted sideways. She said she had spoken to her therapist extensively. She said she was willing to do anything, couples counseling, a financial agreement, whatever I needed. One of the people at the table said, "Was she showing real courage right now, Norman?" I looked at Vanessa. "Why are you willing to do those things now?" "Because I understand what I nearly lost." The word nearly changed was my financial position, I said. "You didn't nearly lose me, you lost me. When you thought the money had gone, you were gone by lunchtime. Now that you know the money is fine, that you're in a cafe in Bulimba with a small crowd of supporters. I understand the logic, but I do not want to be someone's financial plan." The world tilted sideways. I'm a 63-year-old man who lost his wife and who would very much like to spend whatever time he has left with someone who would sit with him regardless of what the bank statements look like. Silence at the table. Her brother-in-law, A man I had met perhaps 4 times said, "I think you're being quite harsh." "I might be," I said. The world tilted sideways, that I'd rather be harsh now than heartbroken later. I thanked my RFDS colleague for the coffee I had not had, told him I hoped we could still work together on the committee, and walked out. The world tills home along the river. The jacarandas were beginning to come out. It was late October, and Brisbane in jacaranda season is as close to beautiful as I have ever found a city to be. The world tilted sideways. I stopped at a bakery in Norman Park and bought pie, ate it in the car, and felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely uncomplicated. The world till Vanessa sent one final message from a number I did not recognize. She must have borrowed a phone. "I know you probably won't read this. I know you've blocked everything." The world tilted sideways. Understand that I wasn't with you for the money. I was scared. I have always had to look after myself financially, and when you told me what was happening, I panicked. The world tilted sideways. I wasn't thinking about what you needed. I know that. I'm not asking you to take me back. I just need you to know that it wasn't only about money. The worded. I thought about it for a while. Then I replied, I believe that fear was part of it. The world tilted sideways. I also believed a person who loved me would have been more frightened of losing me than of losing the house. You weren't. That's the part I can't get past. Then I blocked the number. The world tilted 4 weeks ago. I have not heard from her since through any channel. The world's life since then has returned to something I recognize and am grateful for. Les and I have been to 2 Reds games at Suncorp Stadium. My daughter brought the grandchildren down for the barbecue she promised. The world tilted sideways, and her youngest, who is 4 and has just discovered that grandfathers are useful for things like shoulder rides and biscuit negotiations, spent most of the afternoon following me around the garden pointing at things he wanted to know the names of. The world tilted sideways. I told him the name of every plant in the yard, including the bottlebrush tree which I told him his grandmother had planted. The world tilted sideways, and he said, oh, with the particular solemnity that small children sometimes produce, and that was one of the better moments I have had in a while. I have been back to the Queensland Art Gallery twice. I have been sleeping well. I have not missed Vanessa, which perhaps tells its own story. I have missed the version of her I thought she was, in the early months before I started paying attention. But I have learned to be careful about missing fictions. The world want to say to anyone who reads this and is where I was 12 months ago, older, lonely, someone new in your life who seems like a gift, the world tilted sideways and family raising quiet concerns you keep batting away. Pay attention to what people do when things look difficult, not what they say, what they do. The world tilted sideways and of love that shows up when everything is fine and disappears the moment the weather changes. That version is not love. It is comfort wearing love's clothing. And it will leave you the moment it finds itself inconvenienced. The world tilted 63. I lost the great love of my life 7 years ago. I do not say that to be mournful. I say it because it means I know in a way that younger people sometimes do not. The world tilt looks like when someone stays. Elaine stayed through things that were genuinely frightening. She stayed not because the maths worked out but because she had decided a long time ago that she was in. That kind of person is extraordinarily rare, and it is worth being patient for. The world tilt is also worth being honest enough with yourself to recognize when the person in front of you is not that. Test your relationships if you need to. The world tilted sideways. I don't say that lightly and I don't mean it as cruelty. I mean pay attention. Give people situations where they show you who they are. The world tilted for you eventually anyway. It gave me 2 weeks of medical uncertainty and a woman who responded by asking about bathroom tiling. Life will always show you in the end. The only question is whether you are watching. The world tilted watching now. I intend to keep watching. And in the meantime, the bottle brush is flowering. The grandchildren are coming down again in 2 weeks. Liz owes me a beer, and I sleep just fine.